Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Kroger Delivery has one mission: to deliver the freshest food right to your door. That's why our drivers are pros. Our trucks are refrigerated. And when it comes to low prices, we always deliver. With $20 off your first order of $75 or more, there's no better time to get in on the action. Mission accomplished. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
And I don't think it got weird. I think it just got...
No, it got weird.
Yeah, because there's a bit with a naked guy walking down the hall behind an animated pig, so that's kind of...
That's perfectly normal.
That was weird. That's definitely weird.
It feels so long as well. It feels really, really long. It feels like 2-3 hours, not just over 2 hours.
It's about 2 hours, 14 minutes.
Yeah, it feels longer than that.
It did come to life. Like, they're 4 brilliant actors. I love all 4 actors. So it was great to see them in that form. And then he wasted them.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Today I'm joined by John.
Hello there.
Nicola.
Hello.
And Helen.
Hi.
And we are all thinking of ending things. Oh, sorry, that's the film we're talking about. We're talking about I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Thank you, as always, to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
At FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher.
Hello, film fans. Welcome to Flixwatcher podcast. Our guests today are Nicola and John. Over to you, please, John. Say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what do you do, please.
Hello, listeners. My name is John Loftus. I host the STEM Inspirations podcast. I also present a radio show on 8radio.com, and I can also be found writing about music and movies on goldenpleck.com.
So what can you tell us a bit about the podcast, and do you get to choose what film, what music and movies you talk about, or is it just kind of thrown at you?
Yeah, so the podcast is a science-based podcast. It's based out of a young scientist exhibition that's been running for 60 years now.
Wow.
And I get to talk to loads of interesting...
And where is that, so people can potentially visit if they're in the area?
That is in Dublin. So it'll be in Dublin next January. So there'll be 550 projects on show, and we have some great special guests come over and join us and do shows as part of that as well. And on the podcast, I get to talk to loads of interesting people in the world of science and students that have taken part in the Young Scientist exhibition and gone on and set up companies. So our most famous alumni from the exhibition would be Patrick Collison, who went on and formed Stripe, which you probably use every day if you're making credit card payments. That is somebody who won the Young Scientist a number of years ago. And he's also from my home city in Limerick on the west coast of Ireland. So we're very proud of him.
Does he buy the drinks now, though? I know it's worth billions.
Hard to squeeze a penny out of those lads. That's why they're billionaires.
They're just thinking about transaction fees, and it all goes. Yeah, they don't want to transact with you.
Exactly. Yeah. When it comes to music and movies, both on my radio show and on the music blog, I thankfully can pick what I can review and talk about, and play, which is great.
And that begs the question: do you have a specific genre, era of film and music that you choose, or?
Not particularly. I do focus on up-and-coming Irish music. So the likes of Fontaine's DC probably would be probably one of the most famous bands that have broken big, both in the UK and worldwide. They're currently on tour with Arctic Monkeys. I saw them back in Limerick with 25 other people. They're now playing stadiums to 30, 40,000 people. So it's great to see those guys and the journey they've been on.
Absolutely. Nicola, who are you? I know you're Nicola.
Hello, I'm Nicola. I'm Nicola Millard. By day, I am a psychologist, technologist, and futurologist. So I present, I write, and I research about all sorts of things around people-centered technology. So yeah, I was officially a futurologist for a while, which always begs the question, do I have a crystal ball? The answer is yes, I do. I saw no future in it, though. So frankly, it's a very silly job title. That's by day. So I always say I don't have a podcast. I feel very kind of deprived. I'm a pop tart, really. I go on other people's podcasts, really, normally talking about worky things. So I'm normally talking about things like hybrid working and the future of work and lots of exciting things like that. But by night, I spend a lot of time in very darkened rooms, mostly at the cinema. But I also am a bit of a theatre addict as well. And John and I we work for the same company. So we bonded, I guess, many years ago over conversations around cinema and music. I also am a big Irish music fan. So John's recent recommendation that I took up was C. Matt, who is an incredible Irish country artist who is definitely worth checking out if you want to have a good laugh as well as a good listen.
Oh, fantastic. But we're here talking about films, which is, well, obviously this is the podcast. You've chosen, I'm thinking of ending things, Nicola. Can you tell us first of all why you chose it? Already you're grimacing. I think this could be quite an interesting conversation. But we should preface this by, we've had a couple of Charlie Kaufmans, whether directed or written by Charlie Kaufman in this podcast, so you may well be amongst friends. But can you tell us why you chose it and give us a synopsis in 60 seconds or less? I'll give you, when you get ready for the synopsis, I'll get the timer up.
Yeah, that's going to be the challenge, isn't it? I guess the first reason I chose it, there are a few. The first reason I chose it was the reason I got Netflix. I must confess, I do spend most of my time in the cinema. I'm not a huge streamer.
That means you're quite late to Netflix then.
I was very late to Netflix, in fact, yes. So very recent. And it sort of coincided with lockdown as well, and when I was really missing the cinema. So I got Netflix largely because I am a very big Charlie Kaufman fan, but I'd also read the book, oddly enough, a couple of years before. So the Iain Reid novel, very short book, actually, if you want to just quick read. And I thought when I read the book, there's no way they're ever going to film this. And then they announced Charlie Kaufman was doing it. And I was kind of, well, of course Charlie Kaufman's doing it because it's an unfilmable book all about kind of the inner psyche and depression and aging. And, you know, who else could do it, frankly, Charlie Kaufman. So, I mean, I admire him hugely. He is, I think, one of the most inventive screenwriters. Whether he's as good as a director, I think we could probably debate, but certainly being John Malkovich is probably my favourite of his, but probably his best is Eternal Sunshine, which of course he also got the Oscar for. But so I like his films. I like quirkiness in film. Then I'm a psychologist by background, so I think it's really interesting to see how he articulates those inner monologues. And yeah, that's why I can get dangerously geeky about this film, because I think there's a lot of really meaty psychological stuff in there, which we might get into. Feel free to shut me up if I go too far. But I think the final thing is, as John knows, I'm a very big Jessie Buckley fan. I think she is a fierce talent. I mean, I think she's a
extremely
fairly talented, isn't she?
So talented.
Yeah.
She's amazing. I think she makes some very eccentric choices in the films that she does, but she's always, even if the film isn't 100% perfect, I think she kind of elevates the film, whatever she's in. So yeah.
We spoke about her in The Lost Daughter.
Oh, yeah.
She played the younger version of Olivia Colman, both like two stunning actors. It's just like, well, why not? Absolutely. Both of them smashed it out of the park, and both of them did each other justice, I think, yeah. So yeah, I'm going to get the timer up, and then you have 60 seconds or less. You can take less time if you want to give us the synopsis. And the timer starts now.
This is such a difficult one to synopsize. So it's a road trip movie, really, with probably the emphasis on the trip. So Jessie Buckley plays a young woman who might be called Lucy or Lucia or Louisa or Yvonne or possibly even Amy, who hops in a car with her newish boyfriend, played by Jessie Plemmons, to meet his parents, who are played in a marvellously demented manner by the fabulous Toni Collette and David Thewlis. So as the snowstorm around them closes in, we start to wonder, well, who exactly is thinking of ending things? And we also realise that Jake might not be an entirely stable state of mind. Except, of course, it's not about any of that. It's actually probably about a suicidal school janitor hallucinating about ageing, loneliness, regret, bad 70s wallpaper, maggoty pigs, and Oklahoma. That's probably it.
Great. Those are some key talking points. So before we started recording, Nicola, you said... did you say it might end up in arguments? I'm looking at John here. Where do you sit on the Charlie Kaufman of it all generally? And give us your initial top line thoughts in this film, John.
Right. So Charlie Kaufman, I think you summed it up brilliantly there, Nicola, in terms of he is a very good writer. Whether he is a great director now is definitely open to discussion. I love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Absolutely adore that. And being John Malkovich is just shy of his very, very highest quality. But as a director, I think he's undisciplined. And I think the likes of Michel Gondry and Spike Jonze, who he works with superbly, I think I won't say they rope him in, but they certainly put a little bit more structure and a little bit more shape to his wonderful ideas. And he has definitely got loads of those. But as a director, I don't think I've warmed to any of the films that he's directed, but those films that he's written, they're quirky. I love quirky. I love things that challenge your brain. I love things that go all over the place. But this one definitely tested me for sure.
So there's only been a handful of his directorial films. So we've got Synecdoche, Anomalisa, which is a strange film for different reasons anyway. And then I'm thinking of anything. So I don't know, is there enough to form a pattern there for his director style, do you think?
Yeah, I think existential angst is definitely a theme. I think he does, a lot of his films are about the creative process. This one isn't, actually. So, Synecdoche would be a good example of a theatre director who's very clearly, again, having a slight mental breakdown. So I think, mental health is actually definitely one of his things. It's actually quite interesting. I've listened to quite a few interviews with him over the years, and I hadn't realised until recently that his production company is called Projective Testing Services. Now, if you're a psychologist, you'll get that joke. A projective test, the best example of a projective test would be the Rorschach ink blot test. So they're deliberately designed to be ambiguous. And I think that's the in-joke with him. All of his films are deliberately designed to be interpreted in very different ways by each and every member of the audience. And he doesn't mind that. And that's why I think he doesn't like doing interviews as well, because he doesn't really want to explain himself. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why I like him, because there's no one answer and he challenges his audience. But then the flip side of that is you really do have to pay attention. And I think one of the reasons why I tend to go to the cinema to see a lot of films is it's very easy to be distracted when you're streaming at home. So I think this one challenges you to switch off the mobile phone and try not to get the dog coming in and children or anyone else to try and interrupt you, because otherwise you've got to go back and start again almost.
I think you're showing your hand towards the engagement score here. Helen, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind is our great white whale in terms of films, for you certainly, that we want to have on here. And it comes onto Netflix for like a period of time. Just enough time for someone to pick it and then gets kicked off the platform. And we only record films as they are on Netflix. So we've just been shy of recording it a few times. But it's fair to say you like his written side of things.
Yeah. We've also had Adaptation on and Being John Malkovich, which, we enjoy them. I would say they are generally quite warm films. There's a lot of heart in there. There's a lot of emotions. And I agree with everything that's kind of been said as him as a director, whereas this feels kind of cold and very detached in comparison to those. So I saw this when it came onto Netflix and was quite excited about it because I love the two Jessies, obviously. But previous Kaufman has been good, but this was a thoroughly frustrating and irritating experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I thought, I was like, am I going to watch it again? I thought, you know what? Someone's picked it, so they've obviously got some strong reasons why they picked it. So I'm going to give it another go. And man, oh my God, I was irritated as soon as it started. And I don't know, I just didn't get on with this at all. And it commits, which I'd forgotten, the ultimate sin. There's interpretive dance at the end. Maybe I would have forgiven.
Is that the ultimate sin?
Forgiven lots of things. And it's not even Jessie Buckley dancing, and she's a great performer. It's someone else. So it's but she can dance. Why not use her? So anyway, not even the great Toni Collette could save this for me, unfortunately. And I did try this second time, but it's just so boring as well.
I didn't find it boring.
It's not boring. Never boring.
I didn't find it boring, but I thought, I wasn't with the dance bit at the end. That kind of came out left field. Didn't really do anything to the story apart from make you think, why are we doing this? Sorry.
It's really weird because I hated that ending. I've seen this probably about 6 times now, and I hated that ending for probably the first 4. And it's very different to the book's ending. The book's ending is far more sinister, and it's much more a creeping horror, actually, in the book. Whereas I kind of objected to Kaufman suddenly absolutely going into a song and dance number. And particularly the song at the end, Jessie Plemmons singing, you're thinking, Jessie Buckley's got an amazing singing voice. Why don't get her up on stage? And you're right, dancing as well. I saw her in Cabaret. She was astonishing. But I actually changed my mind because I went to see, I don't know if you've seen the very dark production of Oklahoma that's on in London at the moment, the Daniel Fish production. You always think of Oklahoma as a kind of bright, what a beautiful morning type, really upbeat, and it's not. And that production, the Daniel Fish production, is very downbeat and very sinister. And the song that they've picked is actually it's the Judd Fry song. And Judd Fry is the sinister kind of baddie of Oklahoma. He's a loner. So obviously, he's kind of Jake. So he's a loner, he's an outsider, he's got a crush on a girl that he hasn't got the courage to talk to. And then Curly, who obviously is the hero of the piece, basically says, why don't you commit suicide? Because you're useless. And then, of course, he goes and tries to seduce this girl, and he ends up getting stabbed and dies. And all of this kind of plays out in something that you remember as a very upbeat musical, but actually it's incredibly dark, and the Daniel Fish production really emphasises that. So I think when I saw that last 20 minutes this time, I was kind of, actually, I get this now. I think it's the wrong ending, but I get why Kaufman put it in. So
it's tying in with Oklahoma, at least the story beats and themes of it.
Yeah, and like most things in the film, it's seeded. So there's Oklahoma being rehearsed in the school. You hear it on the radio. That's why I like this. That's why I've seen it 5 or 6 times. You just pick up on these little clues that he leaves you all the way through as to actually the fact that this is playing out, spoilers, entirely in Jake's mind. And I'm going to get a little bit psychological here because I think it ties in with a Jungian theory called the shadow self. And normally the shadow self is your repressed self. So it might be the self that's having suicidal thoughts, but it's repressed. You kind of tuck it away. And I think it's interesting. I'm not sure who is the shadow self. It could be either of the Jessies actually in this one, but normally it's hidden. And I think one of the 2 Jessies is that shadow self. I don't know which one, because normally it's obvious. But it's also, it plays out in dreams, and I think there's a very dreamlike quality to this film. The conversations make no sense because basically he's having a conversation with himself. And he's having a conversation about things he's read or seen. So whether it's a movie, whether it's a book that he's read, whether it's a conversation he's had with somebody else, the conversations make no sense because it's him talking to him. So it's all really quite interesting when you start to pick out those little things, those clues that this is actually entirely playing out in a suicidal janitor's mind. And my theory actually is he's actually freezing to death at the time. So he's hallucinating because obviously he does freeze to death in the snow in the end whilst being eaten by a maggoty pig. I don't know. But that kind of thing, I think it points towards schizophrenia as well.
Hey, Atlanta. Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
I said, Kobe, you got all that, didn't you?
I did it on the first watch.
Yeah.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a clue.
This is the thing that annoys.
Can't believe it took you 5 or 6 watches to get that, Nicola. Come on.
I tell you, no, I picked up on some of it on the first watch, and even things like obviously the Pauline Kael bit, which is weird.
And you see the book appear in the shelf.
Yeah. That bit, it's quoting Woman on the Verge, which is of course a film entirely about schizophrenia. So again, is it pointing towards he's seen his parents
mental state,
die of, well, certainly his father has dementia. He thinks he's got something wrong with him as well, but he's too insular. He's too lonely to discuss it. So he's kind of playing it all out in his mind. That's my theory anyway.
What were we going to say, Helen?
This is all like great and fine and does make sense, but you've watched it 6 times, you've read the book, and you've got kind of like a lot more experience. And I'm not against films that challenge you or push you or make you think differently or open to interpretation. But this just feels deliberately like, if you don't know all this stuff, you're not in the club, we're not going to let you in. And I think there's a danger of like having too much stuff that is completely closed and you need all of that insider knowledge to get any enjoyment. And then having things that you can interpret and you can get through a sense of that. And it was only because I'd read the synopsis of the book, I'd seen it twice, and I'd read like loads of reviews that I was like, oh, maybe, okay, I can kind of see that they might not be real people. They could be the same people. But it was only through all of that. And I'm like, I can't be bothered with that, I'm afraid. You've got to give a little bit more than that, I think. And he's done that before in different things, and the other films are just so much more accessible, even though they are weird and they're out there and they're not like linear narratives.
Yeah, I think you're dead right, Helen. I'd agree with you in terms of, I love a puzzle box film, whether it's, David Lynch. I was listening to your recent Memento episode, and those sort of things, they draw you in, and they give you a little bit of crumbs. They don't give you everything, but they draw you in. And, they keep you engaged. Yes, we might be showing our hand for later on, but they keep you want to find out more, and you're asking yourselves questions. Whereas I think definitely two of us, maybe even three of us, were kind of concentrating on, can I stay with this movie right to the end? And that's why I think, some of the structural choices and some of the staging definitely left something to be desired on that. And and there's the odd movie I've gone through and I've kind of struggled with it and said, but I've been intrigued to go back and find out more about it. And I did did read a little bit after my viewing of it. And sometimes with movies that would intrigue me to go, right, maybe I should go back and watch it again with that extra knowledge.
But not this time.
Get me watching this again, I'd say.
Again, showing your hand to repeat viewing score.
Possibly.
Yeah, I think I was in between Helen and John and Nicola. I quite enjoyed it. I think Jessie Plemmons, super engaging character. All of them. Jessie, I thought it was going to be a four-hander for the main part, apart from then you had the kind of interjections going back to the janitor, who is Jessie Plemmons' character in, a later or different life or whatever. But essentially it was like a bit of a four-hander. And, those four around a dinner table is great. And I think it's things like that which really kind of pull you in. Pull me into the familial kind of conversations having around the table. Jessie Plemmons being annoyed by his mum. All these kind of scenes I've seen played out around dinner tables that I've been involved in. That kind of thing really pulled me in. But that kind of sides towards the normality of normal side of filmmaking or watching films. And it wasn't only until it was at the point where they go from the dining table and then they go into the lounge, and suddenly Toni Collette's character couldn't hear so well. I was like, hold on, have I missed something? I wasn't sure what's going on here.
Also, their clothes change as well.
This is I just wasn't. You just don't pay attention to that. But when I've gone and reviewed some scenes, and there are some scenes where Jessie Buckley's character, her clothes change within frames, and you're like, oh, okay, so I do need to pay attention here a bit more. So I will go back, show my hand to repeat viewing score. I need to watch it again, knowing that there are subtle things, but then also I did pick on what I think are the more subtle things, like the Oklahoma thread running throughout the film. I didn't know the songs, so I didn't know the context of the last dance number, which kind of makes more sense, but also I still think, come on. So I quite enjoyed it just as a curio. I don't know, in the show notes I talked about the film within the film bit, which really had me confused. I did generally think, what's happened here?
Directed by Robert Zemeckis.
Exactly, yeah.
Apparently that was something the editor just put in as a temp, and then Kaufman found it very funny and contacted Robert Zemeckis, who said, yeah, fine. So it's not a dig at Robert Zemeckis.
Oh, no, I didn't think it was.
But it is a bit weird. Because it's a terrible film as well. Because it said the dialogue's very stilted and...
That's it. She turns around, everyone applauds, and then she gets fired. And
yeah.
So what is this we're doing? What's going on here? But yeah, I think it's generally kind of engaging in a way. You have to be off the right mindset. I didn't know where this film was going at all when it started, so I just thought it was going to be like a stand Meet the Parents kind of film, but with a darker edge, because Jessie Plemmons doesn't do light-hearted films really, or TV shows. So I thought there was going to be something about that. Jessie Buckley doesn't necessarily do light-hearted stuff as well. So yeah, I really liked David Thewlis in this. I always like his voice. I really like his voice and how he sounds and things. And he's got a really good, like, gruffy voice. Did he try to be American in this? I don't think he ever does.
No, he didn't. He was his usual wonderful self, as he's been since Naked.
It's also weird that whole scene, they don't make eye contact with Jessie Plemmons at all. Because I've watched it actually this time because I thought this can't be true, but they don't. And there's all sorts of just little quirks in that. I have to say, I find that scene hilarious.
The dinner scene.
I think we've all been there, the meet the parents awkward scene, but it's tinged with almost some horror tropes. There's actually, I don't know if it's deliberate or not.
Well, the dog was quite freaky.
The dog is very freaky, and then there's the scratches on the door and the basement. You never go in the basement. It's a horror movie trope,
Maggoty pigs as well. That's kind of a
maggoty pigs.
It's an Ari Aster type thing.
But also the bedroom is almost Psycho-like as well. So I just picked up a few Psycho vibes coming from the sort of design.
Big time. I think that was that for me. If I was to say what was the part of the film that I enjoyed most, it was the arrival to the house. Like even the fact that the parents weren't coming down
for a while.
There was a sense of unease. Don't go downstairs to the basement and all those things that you've mentioned.
Well, it's even not going straight into the house when you arrive. Let's go for a walk. Even though someone waving at you, like, something's going on here. And she asked about the lamb, they're cheap, and she's like, what's going to happen to them? Well, they're dead. It's cold. It's frozen. That's it. Like, okay, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And that initial exchange around the table, like it was like it did come to life. Like they're 4 brilliant actors. I love all 4 actors. So it was great to see them in that form. And then he wasted them.
I think the car journeys are...
Yeah.
I found them quite unbearable, which is probably the point.
Unbearable in a stressful way, or unbearable like, I don't like this.
I don't like this. I didn't like the windscreen wipers. I didn't like how boring it was. But I guess maybe that is a car journey. But
so that's what I mean. You found it unbearably boring, not unbearably like tense or stressful.
I just found it really boring. I was like, come on.
Oh, wow.
I found that, it's almost like chamber theatre for that first car journey. And apparently he did it in 25-minute takes. So he just said, go. And they just did it 25 minutes. Obviously, he didn't use 25-minute takes. He cut them. But he kind of, again, you need brilliant actors to do that, and particularly theatre actors to do that, because it's quite weird for film. Just go, and they go on for 25 minutes. So I think they were in that little bubble, and I think they are boring. But I think that is the point. But that rendition of Bone Dog is astonishing. And she also breaks the fourth wall slightly on that one. She looks at the camera at the very end, which I'm not sure if that was deliberate or not, but
I'm sure it would.
That felt very,
yeah,
that felt very powerful to me. It was kind of okay. I'm not sure what's going on here.
I think the conceit of her that she set up at the start is like, I need to get back tonight because X, Y, Z, and her rising stress levels when it became apparent that either Jessie Plemmons wasn't listening to her pleas to leave, and there's this thing about the snow chains. It'll be fine because the snow chains. But you're looking outside the window and saying, if you want to go, let's just go now, mate. Snow chains or no snow chains, this is like in the dark. You don't know what's going to come across. And then it takes the route to the high school down a dodgy. And I didn't find it boring. I found it unbearably stressful. So that's why I was asking for clarifications from Helen there, because I thought, I don't like this. I don't like where this is going. I don't like the tense, the edge it has me on at the moment.
I was the same. And also stopping for cold drinks in the middle of a snowstorm.
What are you doing? And there's three people working there at this place, which maybe one person comes an hour. I thought that was excessive. Is there anything else you want to say, guys, before we head to the scores?
I don't know if you've seen it, but like Beau is Afraid, no spoilers, is almost a companion piece to this.
Oh, is it?
Sort of.
I've been wondering because there has been mixed reviews of that, isn't there?
And it's also 3 hours.
There's some like similarities, even with the kind of like, there's some animation thrown in there and that sense of like needing to get somewhere, but everyone around you preventing that, and dare I say it, very overindulgent.
So be afraid. Beau is Afraid.
This weekend is the start of like the best run of cinema since the pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, because this weekend you got It's Me, Margaret, which I've seen, which is great. We've got Fast X, you got Beau is Afraid, and then you got then it just goes through Little Mermaid.
Rips through it.
Yeah, it's just like week after week after week. It's like, my God.
And we've got Guardians of the Galaxy as well. So.
Well, that was last week for me.
That was last week. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just I said Oppenheimer, Barbie on the same weekend.
Oh yes.
Oh my God.
You what, sorry? No, I think it starts. It started last week. Anyway.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. All of our scores are out of 5. You can have decimal places if you wish, and we will start with you, please, Nicola, with your recommendability.
So whenever anyone mentions a Kaufman film, I always go, do you like Charlie Kaufman? Before I then recommend things. So, but I would say generally a 3 for me, recommendability.
When you ask people if they know Charlie Kaufman, do you know what that means? How do they respond? Because I don't think people would... It's kind of an innocuous name to people who don't know, but at the same time, if you do know, you'd be like, oh, or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most of my friends are fairly cine literate. Actually, our mutual friend Heather, John and I, have the fabulous Heather Wells. She said the other day, should I watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? To which I went, you haven't seen it? And then I said, do you like Charlie Kaufman? And then recommended it and she loved it. So, but yeah, most people I think know a little bit about the genre that is Charlie Kaufman.
I think they probably know the films more than him as a person. Yeah. And it's interesting that him as a writer precedes him as a director, and quite often writers don't get like front billing in a way.
Yeah, and they should, and obviously the Writers Guild are on strike at the moment, and they do deserve a lot more credit than they get at the moment, because frankly the films would not exist without them.
Absolutely. John, recommendability score?
I will give it a 1.01.
That much, John?
I think that's the first time we've ever had a 1.01 ever.
I think it might be.
Yeah.
Any elaboration on that?
I was trying to think of who I would recommend it to, and Nicola was the only one I could think of.
So, if someone said they liked Charlie Kaufman films and hadn't seen it, would you not recommend this to them?
If they like his director work, yes, I would. I don't know anybody that does, to be honest. And that maybe I have a very shallow-based group of friends other than Nicola. Yeah, our mutual friend Heather said she liked it, not loved it. So, but yeah.
Helen?
Yeah, I would really struggle to recommend this to people, even if they were like, yeah, I loved Eternal Sunshine. Like, yeah, I love being John Malkovich. Yeah, I loved Adaptation. I really love Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which not a lot of people do love. I would say no, still. I really find it difficult to, which is a shame because everyone involved I'm a big fan of, and there are like the dinner table stuff is really interesting and there's some really interesting bits in it, but it's just too unfocused and overindulgent. And like, I don't know about Oklahoma, and if you need to know about that to get that, then it's just not accessible in a way that's enjoyable. So I'm going to give it a 2. It gets 2 for the 2 Jesses because I really like them.
What? Not even sports scores for Thewlis and Toni Collette?
They're not in it much. They're not in it much. The Jessies kind of like make it more than a 1 for me.
I'm going to go for a 3. I think I'd recommend it with big caveats, and say, look, it's good. I like the way I didn't know it was Charlie Kaufman before watching it. I like the way I didn't know where it's going until like things were like out of place and strange, and me thinking, okay, I need to lean in a bit more. So I think maybe I was a bit more primed. Maybe I was in the right kind of zone for it. Had someone said it is the guy that wrote John Malkovich, I would have been in a different headspace. Okay, let's see how weird this is going to get. And I didn't think it got weird. I think it just got...
No, it got weird.
Yeah, because there's a bit with a naked guy walking down the hall behind an animated pig. So that's kind of...
That's perfectly normal.
That was weird. That's definitely weird.
3. Repeat viewing score, Nicola.
Well, I think if you can get through it once and not hate it, I would give it a 4.5 because I think it does reward you every time.
6 times.
Yeah. To be honest, I see a lot of movies multiple times, and it's nowhere near my record, which would be Blade Runner, which I've probably seen over 100 times.
What?
Yeah, I know. I can quote it. Don't start me. But yeah, I mean, I see movies a lot, and I like movies that give me lots of little clues, and I can spot, they've got detail. There's density to them, and this is one of those that I think if you get through it once, I actually almost instantly watched it again after the first time of watching it. And actually, that was a challenging day because I think I saw Tenet on the same day as well, which I had a very boiled brain at that point.
What Helen and John are talking about in terms of this as an annoying film, that's Tenet for me, is that?
Yeah,
I'd watch Tenet
I found
again.
this easier to understand.
Yeah. So, John, to repeat viewing score.
I'm going to keep along the 1984 theme, and I'm going to go 1.01 for repeat viewing. I will definitely never watch this again. And I don't think Helen's going to watch it again.
Helen?
Well, I've watched it twice now. I got a bit more the second time round, but I didn't enjoy it. So it feels so long as well. It feels really, really long. It feels like 2-3 hours, not just over 2 hours.
It's about 2 hours, 14 minutes.
Yeah, it feels longer than that. So I'll give it 2. 1 for each time I've watched it.
Yeah, I'll watch it again. For reference, I'll probably do some digging and go onto YouTube for breakdowns maybe before I rewatch it. But I don't think I will go back to that well many more times. So I'll go for 2, same as Helen. Small screen score. Nicola.
I mean, this is one I don't think it would necessarily benefit from a big screen, aside from the fact you would be entirely focused in on it and you would pay attention, you would spot all those little things. But I don't think it's one you necessarily would need to see on a big screen. Of course, you can't because it's only on Netflix. But so I'll give it a 3.5.
Okay. John.
I'm going to surprise you now, Nicola, by outscoring you. I'm going to give it a 4.04. Because, I don't think it would. It's obviously only on Netflix anyway. And I don't think you've lost anything by watching it on a TV. It's obviously presented in, I think that's the Academy ratio. It seems like presented in, isn't it? So,
more elongated than the Academy, but yeah.
Thereabouts, yeah. So it's almost perfectly designed for even an old television. So,
Helen.
So had we have not been in that weird period of post-pandemic but nothing was really happening and this had had a cinema release, then I probably would have gone to see this because of the people involved. I would have fucking hated the experience and it would have been really, really irritating. But I might have had a different experience because the temptation to piss about on my phone wouldn't have been there. So yeah, had it had a normal release, I probably would have gone to see it. That said, if it's shown at the Prince Charles, I'm not going to see it. So, I'm going to give it a 4 for small screen.
I'm going to give it a 5. Whether I would have seen it at the cinema or not doesn't matter, but I think it's absolutely fine for the iPad and big screen, TV screen combination that I had watching it. Engagement score. Nicola.
Well, I mean, I was engaged. I do think it does test people generally, particularly that car sequence. So I'll give it a 3, I think, in terms of engagement.
John.
Yeah, so Helen said that she really struggled with this and time seemed to stand still. And I think I set a record for the amount of times I checked how long was left in the film. And I think I might have even turned it, if we weren't doing this podcast, I think I would have turned it off after 15 minutes, just before that car journey.
Wow, that soon?
Yeah, that car journey really made me struggle. And just even the setup of that car journey, Helen mentioned the wipers. There was also the way it was very theatrical, the way it was set, because even the landscapes at the back, it didn't look like it was moving at one place. It was just like, are they just sitting in a car? They obviously are in a studio doing that, but it looked that way at times, never mind the conversations that were going on. So yeah, no, I really did struggle throughout. Again, that little part in the middle did meet my attention, but then it went off the rails. So we're back to 1984. It's 1.01.
Helen.
I should put it, there are 2 car sequences. There's one at the start and then there's the one when they leave. And I don't have a favourite out of them. Yeah, I really struggled with engagement for this. And I think it's really, really hard to get an understanding of who the people are and what they're about and what their feelings are. They just feel very deliberately closed and cold, which I think I do really enjoy character-focused films and hearing stories and getting to feel like I know the characters, and there's just none of that with it. I think that more than the car journey itself, it's just more about how closed off they are. So for engagement, I'm going to give it a 1.5.
And I'm going to go higher. I'm going to go for almost like a 4 actually on this, because like I said, I didn't know where it's going. Didn't realize it's Charlie Kaufman before I pressed play. I do remember it coming out and have vague recollections of people talking about it, saying it's a bit weird, but that wasn't in my head at all when I pressed play. But when I started to notice the edges being a bit fuzzier, I was like, okay, I need to understand. I need to make sure I'm paying attention here. But also the initial conceit of I'm thinking of ending things was like, okay, so what's happening in their life? Why is she still here, even though they haven't been they're together long enough to even want to take this car journey? So that did actually make me lean in itself. So I love how film divides people. It's really interesting, the discussion that half of us are quite interested by it, half of us like really put off by this journey. I was quite interested by the car journey. I wanted to know why they were still going down this route. I wanted to know if she's going to get back in time to do her work or whatever it was. So I'm going to go for a 4 for engagement score. And that gives us an overall score of 2.7563, which is lower than I thought. Was one of the lowest scores we've had in a while, unfortunately, Nicola. But it's a divisive film, it seems.
You won't be surprised to learn that out of the Kaufman we've had so far, it's the bottom third one. So B and John Malkovich got 4.20, adaptation got 3.97. So that didn't do that high. I think maybe, I can't remember what it was on that one. Maybe the repeat viewing was a bit lower. So yeah.
A bit janky on it. Well, Nicola and John, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for choosing the film. Can you tell us where we can find you online? And we'll say goodbye to the listeners.
Well, you can find me all over the place, frankly, but on Twitter, I'm at DocNicola. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And if you Google me, you'll find some weird videos of me talking about all sorts of weird and wonderful technology and psychology stuff. So, yeah, you'll find me all over the place.
Bit like Charlie Kaufman in this film.
Absolutely.
You'll find me on Twitter at LoftySNDS. That's at Lofty Sounds on Twitter. And you'll find all my ramblings on music and movies there.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much again, guys. It's been a pleasure, for me at least, to talk about I'm Thinking of Ending Things. But it's been fun hearing you guys dissenting. All right. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.